Now it's time to introduce our speaker, Chris from Torrance.
I love that. That's just how AA meetings are supposed to be, right? I'm Chris, I'm an alcoholic. And first and foremost, thank you, Bruce, and and Lynn. I've known these guys a long time because of fellowship, like was talked about, because of fellowship and this beautiful program. And it's a part of, get involved, meet people. We make lifelong friends here, and that's such a beautiful thing. Congratulations, to those who had the courage to stand up tonight. And if you're new in this meeting, and if you didn't have the courage to stand up in another one, but just don't leave the rooms and don't come back. I've been there, I've done that, and so have many of us here. And congratulations to those who took Chip's birthdays. Yay, 1 year is so special. Every year is special, every day is special, it is, but that first year, that first cake is just so amazingly, just like, oh, wow, it happened. Like, how did that happen? And so quickly. So congratulations, you guys and gals. I have a sobriety date, April 27th, 1984. And that's just a lot of days, it's just a lot of days, just like 365 days is a lot of days. And, I got here when I was 25 years old. I'm facing 67 this coming up year, and I can hardly believe it. That happened quick, but 40 years, happened quick. But truly, it is a lot of days, and I'm blessed. I'm blessed to have, when I got here, to have been surrounded by people who introduced me to people who put me in the fold, and that I had that desire to get in the fold. And, my life was a train wreck. I burned it to the ground. And there was no place else to go but up, So I hope, whatever your story is, that you feel that same way, that there's no place else to go, but up. And the up here is a different up than anything I would have ever imagined, right? I am the youngest of three children in my family. I have a very normal-looking family. I didn't pick up a drink to escape, stuff that was going on in my home. Both my parents worked, kind of blue-collar workers. We just were, kind of a run-of-the-mill family, and in the middle of the block on Ripley Avenue in Redondo Beach, and surrounded by a lot of other, wonderful families. There was not a lot of craziness going on. My mom did eventually get sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, but there was no big drinking mess in my home or, anything of the likes when I was growing up. So I can't attribute, picking up that drink to, if you had my household that you lived in, you'd drink too. That's not my story. My parents wanted kids. I know they sacrificed a lot of things for us kids so that we could do some nice things. I think my parents weren't really cultural people, but I think they thought, if they did some good things for us, if we had some music lessons and some dance lessons, and we went to scouts and we did all those kind of things, that, maybe we'd be, little well-rounded kids growing up in society. And if you be like me, I think there was something beating in me from a very early age that I knew there was more fun than what was going on in the Girl Scout meeting, I knew there was a little bit more fun than what was happening in my third grade classroom. I knew that there was a life that I just hadn't tapped into yet, and had a little more excitement than what, was going on in my life. I'd never felt, we hear a lot, I heard a lot when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, many, many people, and I still hear it. They didn't feel comfortable in their own skin. They felt very awkward. They felt very, wallflowers, all these different things that they'll talk about, and that was not my experience. Both my parents were very outgoing people. Whether that's a trait that I got from them or not, I don't know, but they were just friendly, kind people. And so I didn't come in here with any of those kind of feelings. So there was another, I didn't drink because I felt like, weird and awkward and dumb and, I don't know, whatever else, But I knew that there was always this little, I think of Jane, on a limb like Tarzan flying through the jungle, going, oh, that was waiting to come out of me, right? And it was just there. And I remember I had a neighbor girl who was 4 years older than I was, and, so Denise dressed different than I did. I went to Catholic school for a handful of years. I was not proud of my Catholic girl uniform. I was not scarred by the nuns in that church or any of my teachers. I just wasn't, I had a mind that was always busy, so I'd ask a lot of questions, but I didn't get the, why are you asking that question, or, that's not appropriate. I just didn't get any of that stuff. So check, that wasn't another reason, but I wasn't proud of that like little uniform and stuff, and I knew that there was something, and I'd walk home and I'd be like, I couldn't wait to get home and get out of it. I was the same way with my Girl Scout stuff. You think you'd be proud of your little sash and all these badges that you earned and whatnot, and I'm like, this is so hokey. I can't wait to get home and turn this, get this stuff off. And so those were the things that were going on with me, and I had this neighbor girl who was 4 years older than me. Denise wore fishnet nylons and little short skirts, and she was smoking cigarettes already, and, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, So I knew I was attracted to the cool kids, right? What I thought were the cool kids. My parents both smoked. It was easy to just, grab a cigarette out of their pack, and that was my first buzz, to be quite honest with you. I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember sitting down on this little banana lounge chairs, we used to call them. You flip one side out and flip the other side out, and I smoked that cigarette, and I felt dizzy, and I felt sick to my stomach, and I liked it. Right? I probably coughed a handful of times, but I remember liking that, and thinking, that's pretty cool. And that was third grade. In fourth grade, my mom caught me stealing cigarettes from the Alpha Beta store. We were talking about the Alpha Beta that used to be in my neighborhood with somebody the other day. Caught me stealing cigarettes from there. I had my Catholic girl uniform on. I had my pea coat. They were in my pocket. And my mom caught me. We used to say my mom should have been a detective, and she came up to me and she said, what do you have in your pocket? And I think it is something that you need to tell the manager, about, and you can give that back. And busted. So I did. I spoke to the manager and gave him back the cigarettes, and I'm sure my mom was horrified, this little girl, in fourth grade in her Catholic girl uniform and having to do this, but it was not a deterrent for me. It wasn't a scare tactic that, it just didn't, it was like, okay, we got to try harder at this, is kind of what my, where I was at. We got to get a little better at these stints. And so, that just gives you a little idea of what was cooking in me at that very early age. And where that comes from, I have no idea. I had good values, good morals in my home. They were good examples. Where does that come from? I don't know. So when I picked up, my first drink, there was something, it's what the book talks about. It was exactly what the book talks about. I'm not the alcoholic who was off to the races because I kept trying to drown out the stuff that was going on in the house, that I kept, I was scarred by this religious education. These two older brothers were tormenting me, whatever it was. Yeah, the middle one was, because he was an angel. I mean, that's not a good thing to follow, right? My oldest brother was not. But when I picked up the drink, I loved what happened to me. I loved what happened to me. And it was not off to the races right from the start, but there was something that was set up within me at that time. My really earliest memories of the effects of alcohol in a way that had consequences, or that I can look back and really relate to now, kind of what's in the book. I can remember sitting in a classroom in probably 7th grade. I had already been drinking for, some time, and, some of the other dry goods that go along with it, that started happening in 5th grade. And I can remember thinking, like, okay, like Friday's 2 days from now. Like, I'm sure there's there's something going on. How am I going to get the alcohol for the party? And I can guarantee you, if there were 60 kids in that class, there was maybe 2 of us thinking those thoughts, and I was one of those kids thinking those thoughts. That is the obsession of, alcoholic already on this, young lady who's only now, in 7th grade. That's a very early age to have that kind of stuff happening and have that recognition of that, and start to scheme and scam about how am I going to get it? How am I going to get the money? Where are we going to get it? Who's going to be there? Blah, 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 blah. The whole scenarios are already playing out in my mind. And so 7th and 8th grade were, I was a good kid. I was a good student. I never got into, really, really much trouble. I definitely wanted to be a good kid. I wanted good things in my life. I wanted to go to school. I wanted to do great in high school and go on to college. And, at one time I thought, I'd love to be a cinematographer and, had all these little, things cooking in that very early brain of mine. Went into high school and, a lot of schools all come together, and I met, a lot of different people, a lot of cool people, right? A lot of cool people. I lived at the, in the beach area too, and partying was kind of happening. People were smoking a lot of weed, people were doing a lot of other stuff, and by God, I fit right in. I don't know what to tell you. All those little aspirations that I had about things I wanted to do with my life, about how I wanted to make my parents proud, about just being a good human being in this world, and things to follow through with and bring home the A's and all that kind of stuff started to one by one slowly slip away as I began to drink more and drink more and drink more. And pretty soon, I'm missing school, and I start to write all my own notes, and, back in the day when they literally wrote handwritten notes. They didn't take, attendance electronically. I feel sorry for all the young kids today, because I guess you got to be really on it, slowly, little by little, from this girl who went into there, on a college prep, track to go through. It meant you had Spanish and algebra and all those kind of things. The algebra went, and I went down to the next whatever, the whatever went. I joined a swim team. Swim team was cool. I thought, how fun, being part of something that makes your school proud, and I was proud of, what I did on swim team, and it was fun, and the camaraderie, and the, being part of a team and all that stuff, but that didn't last long, because pretty soon I'm not showing up for the practices that I need to be at, in order to represent my school and be a part of a team. And none of those things ever crossed my mind. Because I'm out in the parking lot doing, what I'm doing, and I'm having fun, by God, don't you know it? But what I didn't know is the disease of alcoholism, if I think back to what happened in that 7th grade class, had already really had me. It already had me. I am the person who the book talks about, when, it is the physical craving, the mental obsession. And I don't think the spiritual, what we here talked about as a spiritual malady, really started to, show up later, and that showed up for me in the form of, all those little consequences that started happening. The girl who was good in these things, and who was doing good, and who was bringing home good grades, and now I'm hanging out with different people, and now I'm not bringing home that, and now I'm hanging out with those kids over there, and so I start to feel that stuff. I know it. You look in the mirror, you know it. Now I'm dodging the report cards home. I'm doing all this kind of crazy stuff that, I need to do to defend my, my right at such a very early age to be a little wild hoodlum, instead of this kid going to school and wanting to do good, And I like to party. I love music. I love any sport you can think of that has to do, around drinking. So I joined the ski club, and I joined, this club and that club and whatever else, and, except for all my studies start to go, and then the club things start to go, and then pretty soon school just has to go. It's like I have moved from this college prep class, and I end up in I always have to think through, there's freshman, sophomore, junior, because I didn't do very much of the, the last 2 of those, into remedial classes, what they called them. And it was where all the kids who just weren't like kind of getting it done, and they really wanted them to get done, and they were pulling for you, and they put you in these classes that, they had all the studies together. They just wanted to get you through, and pretty soon I'm like, I can't. I'm partying. I'm having way too much fun than to spend my time in these classrooms. And so I ran away from home, because I knew that sooner or later, it was all gonna get found out what was going on, you know? And so what happened to all this good resolve that I had had, you know, and all these ideas that I had had about, you know, about my life and things the way I wanted it to go. And, you know, at a very early age, alcoholism started to rob me of all those things. But I have no idea anything about alcoholism. You know, it didn't show its face in, you know, in my mom really yet. My oldest brother was 8 years older than I, and he was partying and having all kinds of fun. And I remember him not showing up for his baccalaureate, and my mom coming home in absolute tears, you know. And my grandma, he just didn't show up, right? And I remember saying, I'll never hurt her that way, right? But one day she comes home and there's just a note there for her, and I'm gone. You know, I am gone. Hefty bags are packed, and, you know, the girlfriend picked me up, and her mom's blue Monte Carlo, and, you know, because, you know, I started to tell all these tales about, you know, how bad it was to live at my house. If you lived there, you know, you'd want out too, right? And I went to live with some people, you know, I don't even think it was a quarter of a mile, a fifth of a mile from my parents' house. And, but I got to do what I wanted to do. I got to party like I wanted to party, you know, and I got myself a little job. Somebody let me use a car. I'm not sure how I kept that job, you know, for very long, as, you know, as a file clerk. And, but it was a job, hey, and, you know, it made money, and I had a lot of fun. Alcoholism slowly just took over every corner, every crevice, every nook, every cranny of my life. And every good thing that I ever thought about, you know, being in this world or doing in this world slowly got, you know, just taken away. I will tell you, I was a drug user. It's just part of my story. You know, I was never big on the downers, but I sure wanted to be up because I wanted to party as long as I could party and drink as long as I could drink, you know, because drinking to me was fun. I loved the whole thing about mixing drinks, the sound of it, the going into the liquor store, look at all the bottles, and what else could we try today, and, you know, all that kind of stuff about it. I loved the bar. I loved dancing, and I wasn't your big blackout drinker, but I would drink till, you know, till we couldn't drink anymore. And when the drink was gone, I'd be the one to say, okay, we're passing the bag. Everybody throw in some money because we're going to get more, you know, because it was just party. But the tickets started to come, and then the accidents started to come, and then the job losses started to happen, and all those things that came right along with it started to happen, you know. And by the time I was 25, it was just, you know, I was a mess. I was a PCP user from the time I was 16 till I was 25, and I think about that now, and I think about how I was and how I looked and how, like, you couldn't understand even the things that were coming out of my mouth by the time I got to you. You know, my thoughts were not straight. I thought I was going to end up in a mental institution or, you know, God knows where, you know. And by the time I really got here, you know, I still had my little rosary books and my prayer beads, you know, from when I was a kid. Right? And my confirmation stuff and this little book and that. And, you know, my mom would let me back home and not back home and back home and not back home. And I'm, you know, living with whoever I can by the time I'm, you know, this age. And, you know, I burn you out and I steal from you and I use your car and I don't bring it back because you need to get to work. And, you know, it's just, that's my life. I'm a mess. And I'd gotten a job. You know, I'm a very wise, you know, one of those alcoholics. I stole letterhead from my last company as I walked out the door. I'm a good writer, and I wrote a very wonderful letter of recommendation from that very last boss. I interview well. Who else says that is, there's Bob Bazance, if you've ever heard him talk, you know, I interview well. You know, I just don't work good. Interviewed well. And I got into an aerospace company. At the time, they weren't doing drug testing. You know, it was before all that started to happen. Otherwise, I'd have never gotten in there. And I was in there about 6 months, and I had had a conversation with somebody, you know, in the course of those 6 months about a friend of mine who may need help one day. And when my time came, you know, I called that woman. She had told me about this EAP program that they had. And I called that woman, and it was my time, you know, and it wasn't any too soon, and thank God it wasn't any too late, because by that time I was taking those rosary beads and they were underneath my pillow, and I was praying at night, like, God, I don't know what's going to happen, but I can't keep going on like this. I hated myself. I kind of hated the world, I was just, because I felt cornered. I felt like an animal who'd been cornered by this disease. There was nowhere to go, and I knew the ending wasn't going to be pretty. I had a cousin who died a very ugly death of, with a needle in his arm, and I was just kind of sure that was coming for me too. And so I went and met with this employee assistance program counselor, and he was what I didn't know, he was very much a pioneer in that, in employee assistance programs at the time. I'd seen, my parents had police guys over to the house, and they had, all kinds of stuff, and had me in a little place called Joint Efforts for group counseling, and we'd laugh, Joint Efforts, and, all this kind of stuff, and from, an early age, and I saw counselors and, you name it, but I don't think I ever talked about my drinking. I don't think I ever talked about, the other stuff that I was doing. It was just like, don't you know, my parents got a divorce, and oh my God, it's horrible, and then, all this kind of whatever. But when I went in to talk to this man, because my life was in such a desperate situation, and I knew this was probably job number 18 that I was about to lose, 6 months in this good company. And I had a horrible trip to Palm Springs, where the Palm Springs police asked us to get out. One of the girls that I was out there with, there were motorcycles in the room, and she almost got raped. It was horrible, right? I mean, it was just horrible, and I just knew the end is near. And when I talked to this man, for whatever reason, every guard came down, and I told him everything that was going on. And he was that first person that looked across to me, and he said, "Can I tell you a little bit about me?" And he told me in a general way a little bit about him and his story as an alcoholic. And it was the first person I knew. I believed every word he told me. He felt the same way. Some of the same things happened to him. He just looked me in the eyes in a way nobody else ever had. None of those counselors, none of those whatever. I just knew. And I trusted him. Instantly, I trusted him. And so he asked me, do you think you'd like to, go into a treatment program? And I said yes, and so I entered into that program. They found, had a bed for me. I wanted to make sure it was okay before I went there, so I went and, checked it out on a Saturday, and the director was a hottie, and I thought, okay, I'm in here, and not that I was anything to look at. I had knocked out my bottom teeth. I had, I'd had plastic surgery on the bottom of my face from putting my face through a steering wheel, and, I'm a mess, and obviously my mind's a mess. And so when I go in there, I bring a bathing suit, I bring books to read, I bring nail polish, I bring you name it, and they stripped out all that stuff from my suitcase, right away, because I needed a break, by God. It was hard work doing what I was doing out there. But that is where I was introduced to, Alcoholics Anonymous, and thank God for that. It wasn't a big therapeutic environment. I was given a big book, a 12 and 12, and a non-conference approved 24-hour-a-day book, and a notebook with a lot of note paper in it. And I was introduced right away, to those three things. And a whole bunch of you guys, right, who had lights in your eyes, and who had your family with you on family night, and you were coming back week after week, and by God, you were happy. You were laughing, and you were hugging each other, and, congratulating people on their new job that they got, and all these kind of things. And I'm like, loser, I don't know how any of this will ever happen for me, right? And I was about to lose that job at that company. I did not know that. I was like this close to it. But, I went through that program for 5 weeks, and thank God that Alcoholics Anonymous was its mainstay. Thank God, right? And I met people right off the bat. But more importantly, I learned what alcoholism was. I learned in that big book. It's not the arrest. It's not this. It's not this crappy feelings I have about myself. It's not that I'm using da-da-da-da-da or whatever, that I've lost 16 jobs. It's not any of those consequences. Alcoholism is an illness that I have it's a disease, the book calls it. Thank God for Dr. Silkworth. I'm reading right now with a couple of the gals that I sponsor. We've just started AA Comes of Age, and they're so on fire about this. And I'm like, okay, it gets a little like, they tell you all these people that were involved, but they're so loving it, right? And, but thank God for Dr. Silkworth, that they had men from the medical profession involved in this. If anybody I would ever want to meet in a seance or, whatever, it would be Dr. Silkworth, right? Like, why did you study alcoholics? I mean, like, can you imagine back in the day? I mean, they did the lobotomies on people because they had no idea what to do or how to treat them. And he studied them, right? And when Bill had his moment and he's told Bill, I don't know what's happened to you, by God, but you better hang on to it. That's what I had when I came to you guys. I don't know what's happened to me, but I better hang on to it. And it happened very early on. And he knew that it had to do with the spiritual experience, that he's this man of medicine, a very trained guy, right, who's been through all, his schooling and whatnot. And he knew he could not offer anything. Just like that cop couldn't offer to me, just like being in jail couldn't offer to me, just like going to church couldn't offer to me, just, the counselors I'd seen couldn't offer to me. But when I came to you and you sat down and you cracked that book with me and you started to read that book with me and you started to say to me, this is what powerlessness is. Can you relate to that? Here's my experience with that. Does that sound about right? Start to relate your experience back, how does this, it was like, oh my God. And I didn't do that right off the bat. It took me a little bit. My brain was so scrambled. It was just so scrambled. But by God, you people are so patient and so loving, and to understand that I am powerless over alcohol. I cannot have one drink because of what it does to me. It's not that I have 10 drinks and I get in a car crash. It's that one drink that I ingest into my system that does to my little brain what it did in that 7th grade classroom, and I want more. I want to know where the party is. I want to know what you're bringing. I want to get ready for it 3 hours early because that's how I'm wired. And there's nothing that's going to change that as far as I know to this day. Right? I am powerless over alcohol, and my life was very unmanageable, and my life is still unmanageable by me, and that's what led me into, to finally, get I didn't have a problem with the God thing, but, to come to believe that a power greater than myself, could restore me to sanity. And I don't think sanity, for me, my understanding of sanity is not what we often hear, is that doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results. That it's going to restore me to some sort of sane thinking where alcohol is concerned. That's what God has restored me to sanity about. The obsession to drink like that has been removed. I don't, in any part of me anymore, I still know I'm an alcoholic. I am as subject to walk out of this room, drive home, and have something, God knows what. I hope it doesn't happen, but, it says there will become the day where there's no mental defense against that first drink, which tells me I still have something in here that if I ingest it, it's alive again, and so I know that I'm powerless over that, and I believe that a power greater than myself has restored me to sanity. I used to wake up and it felt like I woke up and there was a monster with me waking up. Like literally just like gripping, like, not today, please, not today. Not today. And there was nothing I could do to not, go out and set down that path again. Nothing I could do before then. I watched the progression of it in my life. And it's everything the book talks about. It's everything Bill talks about in his story, the progression of it. Slowly by slowly by slowly by slowly, And so, it took a long time for me to really, I think I was a little afraid. I remember asking my first sponsor, let's go back through that 3rd step again. I'm not sure I have it, And I think I was just so afraid that my life that something would happen and I would, wander back out these doors. I did at 6 months take a drink, and I had already taken a clean cake. A sponsor threw me a birthday party, and I never told anybody about that drink because it was a half a beer, But I will tell you what happened to me. That hole in my gut grew just like it had been there before I came to you. That hole grew so big, that I couldn't anymore, look myself in the mirror, pass by you guys and look at you in a way that, I knew that, all was good, right? And one day I went on my first retreat, and I remember leaving that retreat, and I went, I have to just come clean with all this. And you know what you did? Oh, God, just come on, get that darn urine, we'll have another birthday party, right? And that's what because you were happy I stayed. You were happy I didn't go back out on some huge bender and lose my life. And I've seen a lot of people do that, over the course of time. All right, I'm watching my little deal here. And so, eventually I took that first 4 step, right? I have that sponsor that I don't finish. I don't finish anything back in the day, nothing. I probably had knitting projects and needlepoint projects, and I walked, out of baseball games because don't you know somebody's having a party and we're gonna go. I didn't finish anything. And so my sponsor caught on to that very quick. They can be some sharp little puppies, And she said, bring your calendar because you're going to open up your calendar. I'm going to give you the date that you're going to have your 4-step done by. And she gave me some instruction, and it wasn't really the instruction, to do a 4-column deal. It was more to write a story and sweep the searchlight kind of thing, which the book talks about we have to do. And so I did. And she said, and here's the day you'll read that to me. So that day loomed. I'm sure I wrote like a madman, like days beforehand to really get it done. And, but I sat with her and I had remembered there was a speaker that we used to have that was from the PV area years ago, Ted Harbach. And Ted came to the hospital that I was in and talked at one time. And I just remember there was a chalkboard. And Ted was like beating on this chalkboard with this piece of chalk, spit flying and chalk flying. And he's like, and you make sure you put down your deepest, darkest secret, in that deal. Nowhere does it say that in the book. It says sweep the searchlight. We look at, our nooks and crannies and whatnot. But it stood out for me. And so I remember walking out of there, and I had told that lady my deepest, darkest secrets. And I had enough trust in her that, it was going to stay with her. And she gave me enough out of what she heard of that it kept me going, until I found another person that I started to do, the 4 columns, the 3 columns, and, and take a look then, the magic flip of, okay, where, am I at fault here? Where are my faults and mistakes is how it puts it. And there's magic in that. There's really a lot of magic in that. But there's magic in just doing any attempt on a 4-step. I remember feeling so light. I remember feeling so good. One, that I had finished it, right? That I did something that all the way through what was asked of me and I had done it, right? Just like you said, do whatever, and I felt free, in a way. Other, inventories since then have been the inventories that get down to causes and conditions, and why do I do some of the things that I do, what is about me, and, the spiritual malady kind of part of the stuff, that I do feel less than, that I do, oftentimes feel awkward or isolated or, whatever it may be. Why do I walk in a room late over and over and over again or, whatnot? Take a look at that. What's that about? And start to get down to all those things. And out of that, comes this weird thing we talk about in 6 and 7. What is it? Is one different or not? I don't know. You could probably debate that, till the cows come home, right? About our character defects and shortcomings, but you know what? I know I had, a host of them, and it was explained to me that, I was not going to have much to do other than to identify them and become willing, and that's just what the steps say, to become willing to be changed with these things and have these things removed, What was going to fill them, I don't know. But what I know, is that if I become willing, and it's been so often in my life, and those things that I give to God, no matter what they may be, once I become willing, it seems like they kind of get carved out to open up a space for something new and different that I wouldn't have seen coming. Right? And it was the same way with, like something was replaced and a different kind of character asset came in, and pretty soon it was like it was something that I never thought about again, but willingness was the key for it for me, like just to be able to take the risk to change. And doing that first, out of the inventory work and making that list, an 8-step list and going into those amends. Scariest stuff I've ever done on some of those, to be quite honest with you, just frightening to go and sit with another person, and really make an amends. But to really, I think there is nothing that has been more powerful to me than some of those amends, to really get down and understand how I have harmed another human being. That I have not only broken your trust, but I've made you fearful, right? That I've robbed you of something that's been a human right of yours. That I've made people, do things for me to cover up, to rob them of their own time and their own whatever, to really get down to, it's not just that I stole something from you. I made you feel unsafe. I made you feel like you had to guard things that you bought were your possessions. Right? Those kind of things. Like, is she coming in the middle of the night, All those kind of things. And to really get down to, in making amends to people and understand what the harm is and what I am, what I'm coming to you for. It was a very powerful step. And certainly very different than anything I ever did in any confession that I, made and went, said 3 Hail Marys and 4, after contrition, whatever, I don't know, I had to say, a lot of them. And do that stuff. It's hard not to be changed, it's hard not to be changed. And slowly by slowly, this girl got changed, and I became a woman you could count on. I became someone that my dad gave me a key back to the house. I became an employee who stayed with a job for 32 years. I became a caretaker of parents. I became all those things that I saw you guys in your first meetings talking about. I became a person who could keep a bank account and pay her bills on time and not string you along with a, tale of whatever. I became accountable. I never thought any of that stuff was possible for me. I learned how to bring the 12 steps and the 12 traditions into my workplace, into my home life. How to treat each other with dignity and respect, how to keep my mouth closed, how not to do eye rolls, right? All those things I have learned by doing work in these steps. If I say I'm going to be somewhere, I end up somewhere. All those little things that are so big to a person like me. Alcoholics Anonymous has made me a completely different individual. Right now in my life, I'll close with this. Right now in my life, I feel a little lost. I don't know why. I don't know if it's my age. I don't know if it's, I'm single. I've been single for a long time. I don't have family here. I don't have kids. Alcoholics Anonymous is my family. I'm still very involved in AA and stuff. But it's just, maybe it's that the time ahead is so much shorter than the time behind you. Maybe, I don't know what it is. Do I retire now or not retire now? I'm in a great job that, was God-given, It's just like I feel just kind of wayward. And my sponsor moved to Washington. I need to get somebody that I see face to face. But my feet are trained. I know what to do and where to go. I read my books. I start with prayer and meditation every single morning. I start with thank you, God, that I have awakened today, and I do not have the obsession to drink or to use, because it is your miracle and nothing I have done. And it is nothing that, by the end of this 24 hours, I pray that I can go to bed and put my head on my pillow. And I do this every day. I'm 40 years sober, but I'm an alcoholic. That disease can come around the corner and bite me in the butt, right? It is not up to me. It is a gift I have been given. you know, and I read my little books, I sit and contemplate about what I've read, and then I read some AA, you know, kind of literature, and I do some very thoughtful prayers, you know, and you have taught me how to do that, you know, and then I suit up and I show up with you and these ladies that I sponsor, and I keep it really simple, you know, and I am forever grateful for this life that you have given me. And thank you so very much for letting me come up and share with you. And happy holidays. Merry Christmas to everybody. I hope you have a great one.